My name's Steve Snyder-Hill, and I'm an author of Soldier of Change from the Closet to the Forefront of the Gay Rights Movement. And I'm here to tell you my story today. And one of the things that I like to say is that it's not my story, it's our story. It's every LGBT service member story that's ever served in silence. I never take ownership over our story. So let me just kind of start by wrapping up what brought this to the forefront of the public conscience, and that is that there was an event that happened in Iraq, and it was covered in the LA Times. I'd like to kind of start backing into the story this way, so that way you can kind of understand the precipice of everything that happened. And then I like to take you back and explain why it all happened, and then to show how you can use that to trust the power of your voice. So basically, one of the things that was really cool about this LA Times story is the author that came to write this story is somebody that he really wanted to meet Josh and I. So it wasn't just that he wanted to write a story about what happened. He wanted to actually physically come and spend time with us. And when I saw the story in the paper, one of the things that was just kind of breathtaking about what he did was that the headline of it said, "America saw Stephen Hill's face for 15 seconds. It took him a lifetime to show it." And I thought that that was really an incredible way to kind of frame this story and frame our story, what happened with the GOP debate, what led up to that. So let me kind of, I can tell you what happened, but I think that Hollywood does a much better job of that. So I'm going to jump over to a television series called The Newsroom that was on HBO. And I'm going to show you the clip of their interpretation of what happened to me in Iraq.
Coming back in 5, 4.
Copy. 0036 to 41.
Presidential candidate Michelle Bachmann thinks our troops are the best.
They are the best. This is the easiest thing to get behind. It doesn't get any better to help our troops when they are literally on the lines fighting for our freedom.
Presidential candidate Herman Cain will not apologize for having the biggest, baddest, greatest military on the planet.
And I don't apologize for having the biggest, baddest, greatest military on the planet.
Presidential candidate Mitt Romney would like the rest of us to support the troops even more than we already do.
I think it's time for American citizens and politicians to show a surge of support and for us to reach out to our neighbors who are serving in the military.
And presidential candidate Rick Santorum marvels, as we all do, at the selfless act of volunteering to serve in a time of war.
So we have a culture right now that doesn't say serve. It doesn't say don't think about yourself. It says me, me, me. It's a very self-absorbed, me-centered, excessive popular culture. And yet we have brave men and women who are willing to step forward because they know what's at stake. They're willing to sacrifice their lives for this great country.
Stephen Hill is a decorated captain in the U.S. Army, where he's been a reservist for 20 years. He is this very night serving in combat in Iraq, as he was last night when he asked this question via YouTube at the GOP debate in Orlando, Florida.
In 2010, when I was deployed to Iraq, I had to lie about who I was because I'm a gay soldier, and I didn't want to lose my job. My question is, under one of your presidencies, do you intend to circumvent the progress that's been made for gay and lesbian soldiers in the military?
That was a big room full of Republican primary voters booing an American combat soldier who, as he was speaking, was in combat. The audience members who were booing were in Orlando. Soon they'll surely be in hell, though not soon enough. Not everyone was booing. There were people in the audience who heard Captain Hill say that when he was deployed to Iraq, he was worried that if his sexuality was discovered, they might not let him go. As opposed to most of us who, if told we were being deployed to Iraq, would go Corporal Klinger faster than you can pull on a yellow taffeta picnic dress. I'm sure there were even some people in the building who stood up for Captain Hill. People who had the simple strength of character to turn to the fraction of a human in the seat next to them and say, how many different kinds of disgusting do you have to be to boo a man who volunteered to fight and die for you? I'm sure those people were there. I'm sure there were many of them. But unfortunately, none of them were on the stage. Not one of these would-be commanders-in-chief took a moment to stand with a line officer. They let him stand alone. Soldiers never do that. Leaders never do that. Witless bullies and hapless punks do it all the time. The only president on the stage last night was Stephen Hill. Godspeed, Captain Hill, and come home soon. A grateful nation is waiting to say thank you. That's Newsnight for September 23rd. Terry Smith is up next with the Capitol Report.
So this was kind of an incredible event. We didn't know that they were going to do this clip at all. We woke up and had a billion Facebook messages that said, "I saw you on the newsroom." And I was like, I don't even know what that is. So if you're ever wondering if they ever have to get your permission for stuff like that, they really don't. So anyway, I got a lot of crazy pushback after that event happened. Now that's a fictional story, of the news telling the event, but the event was true. It happened and it was real. I had everything from people saying that I was a Democratic plant at the debate and I wasn't even a real soldier. I wasn't in Iraq, all kinds of stuff like that, to that it was a political thing. And anybody that's in the military can tell you that we're not meant to do anything political. And my motivation, me being here today and telling my story, is going to give you insight into why I did what I did that day. And you'll understand that it has nothing to do with politics. So basically, let's talk about why I did what I did. So I like to frame this as my story, but it's really our stories, because for every story that I tell you about what I've gone through, there are thousands and thousands of people that have sacrificed everything up to and including their life to serve their country, that never got a chance to tell their story. So that's why I always want to say it's our stories. So the book that I wrote kind of takes you through all this. But what's nice about what I'm doing here, that I'm kind of going to supplement a lot of what's in the book, some of the stuff that's not in the book. So anybody that's read it, this should be kind of a treat, because you can kind of get some stuff that you might not have been able to experience through this. So when I was growing up, I grew up in a small town called Upper Sandusky, Ohio. And it really honestly was a hard place to grow up, because it wasn't very diverse, and it was just a very, very small-minded place. So one of the things that I remember from being a kid, I guess I was in the 94. I wasn't really a kid anymore, maybe in my 20s. But they had posted, the Daily Chief Union is our newspaper, and they like to do a kind of like mocky April 1st Fool's joke. And so I opened up the paper as a young man and pulled this up, and it was a thing that was mocking gay people. It was basically saying that Oliver North was going to come to Upper Sandusky and lead a gay pride march with the Ku Klux Klan. That was their idea of a joke. So as a young kid, there's my Boy Scout picture. This is the type of stuff that we as kids or as young adults had to look at as our kind of role model for what gay people were. And it was really in the 90s was mocking, people were making fun of us and how hard that is to grow up in. So I always say that I had this darkness inside of me growing up. So I never understood what the darkness was. Now I definitely understand. But this darkness, I always describe it as that it would just kind of make me a recluse. I wouldn't really try to make friends. I would be very shut in and very closed to everybody. When I was growing up, my mom used to tell me she could always tell that there was something about me that just wasn't connecting with her. And so it was this darkness, that's the best way that I could describe it. At the time, I didn't know that it was what the darkness was, but I just knew that there was something inside of me that just felt sad and just felt lonely. So one of the things I kind of did is to try to escape my small-minded town, which at the time I really didn't know I was gay. I just felt like that there was something that was unhappy in me, and I couldn't figure it out. And so in November of 1988, aging myself a little bit, but I enlisted in the U.S. Army as a private. And that is a picture of me at, how old would I have been? 18 years old there. And I weighed strapping 125 pounds in my uniform as a little private. So joined the Army and went in and served. And so I had some fun stuff that's in the book that I get to talk about, because one of the things that happened when I was in Iraq that I just think is a kind of incredible story is that there's a chapter called Lost and Found in Iraq. So I was a private, and anybody in the military can tell you that probably the people that give us the most headaches a lot of the times are privates, private first classes, and they get in trouble or they screw up or they don't follow rules or whatever, and they're always kind of causing issues for all the people in the military. Well, when I was in Iraq, I had the opportunity to go on a cruise ship. Actually, I got pulled out of active duty because I was in artillery. And to tell you how rare this was, it was only 2 people in the whole battalion, me and my friend Lee. You can kind of see us walking onto the cruise ship as they took our picture. So now keep in mind, the 2 purposes of the cruise ship were really to fraternize with women and to eat and drink alcohol, because it was parked off of Bahrain, and they were observing Ramadan, but they allowed people to drink. This was at a time, when I was 18, 19 years old, that obviously I was not going to fraternize with women, and I didn't drink at the time. So it was kind of a waste for me to win this lottery to go on this, but got on this cruise ship and ended up getting awful food poisoning, so bad that I was incapacitated, and they ended up pulling me off the cruise ship and putting me into like a local hospital there. And it was kind of a bad time for the military back then, because now we have CAT cards that have chips in them, and every time you eat a meal, you scan your CAT card so they know where you are every single time you go to get a meal. Back then we had a laminated ID card. Tracking was terrible. They pulled me off this ship and I was in a hospital and was sick for days. By the time I got out of this hospital, Lee had already gone back. They'd already taken him back, and I was AWOL. Like, they didn't know where I was. Nobody knew where I was. I didn't have any money with me, and nobody was accepting my ID wherever they pulled me off in the civilian area to eat. They were like, that's not, you need money to eat. And so then this started a long 2-week process of me just basically hitchhiking. Like, I went with British people for a while. I went with Marines. I kind of told them I didn't have anything to eat, and people let me come in and eat with them. And it was just this long 2-week ordeal that is just almost unbelievable, that I call Lost and Found in Iraq. The reason I kind of bring this up is that when I flew over to Iraq, one of the first things that happened, and this was the second time that I flew over, because I've served 2 times there, 2 tours in Iraq. The second time, we were on the plane, and one of the soldiers got on the plane and was joking and said, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight our in-flight movie is going to be Brokeback Mountain." And then the whole plane just bursted with laughter, like it was a joke. And I remember sitting there looking at these guys, and this was, I was older then, and I was thinking to myself, you guys are my brothers and sisters. You guys are who are going to protect me if something happens and we get in trouble or whatever, and you're mocking me, and how horrible that felt. Well, the first time that I flew to Iraq, I'm just a kid. My dad was in Vietnam, and it meant a lot to me. So I really, really wanted to do something for my dad. So I did one of the most selfless things that you could do as a kid. And that was, I wanted to start a journal and start explaining everything that happened, every way that I felt. It's kind of my first endeavor to write a book, although I had no intention of writing a book. And I really, honestly, to be frank, hated writing it every day. It took a lot of kind of self-discipline to sit down and write the way you were feeling, and write what you were seeing, and write what you were going through. But the picture on the right here is me with that journal. And that journal to me was the most important thing in the world to give to my dad. So I documented, the reason I bring that up now is that this whole thing with Lost in Iraq, when I got lost and ended up hitchhiking and ended up finally getting back to my unit, as crazy as that whole story was, every day I wrote everything that was happening in that journal. And I kept thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a crazy story someday. Well, at the end of the war, we came back and the military wanted to honor us. So they had us get off the plane. And here's another irony for you. The entire war in the desert, we wore those those uniforms, which were green camouflage for the forest. And then at the end of the war, after everything was over, they finally got us our DCUs, which are the desert versions of those. So they wanted us to wear those DCUs as we flew in back to Germany, which we never had them the whole time we were there, which is kind of funny. But anyway, so on that bus trip back, they had a switch and they had us leave all of our belongings on that thing. My first journey entry, or my first journal entry going over there, was saying that I'm writing this for my dad. It was the plane ride over. My last entry coming back was the plane ride coming back. And I just thought it was an incredible, I mean, it was a book of feeling. And here's the thing that kills me, and this seriously makes me emotional, is that I came out in Iraq. Like I came out to myself, I'll say that. Actually, I came out to myself in Iraq during the first war. I came out to the world in Iraq during the second war. But anyway, everything that I was going through was in that journal. And as coded as that language would be, I mean, I was probably talking about my feelings. I was talking about things. I didn't write things like that, you know, I know that I'm gay or anything like that. But everything that I was going through was part of that journal. And when I got off that bus, we had to leave all of our belongings. Somebody stole my bag. And so I lost that bag and probably a Walkman, a Sony Walkman or whatever. So every day that I go into a Barnes & Noble or bookstore, I always look just to see if somebody dug that out of a garbage and published it or whatever. Because I honestly, that would be probably one of the most valuable things in the entire world if I could ever get my hands on that again or find it, to be able to read that, because that was probably one of the most intimate stories of my coming out, in a way told that was that I didn't really accept or understand it myself. So I call that my greatest loss. So let's get back to the darkness inside of me. So again, all those things that I wrote in that journal kind of talk about that, address it a little bit, but just never head on. So during the Gulf War, these are some pictures. You know, we had a lot of stuff happen, and we were in an 80-hour ground battle. That was the climax of it. I mean, I'll be honest, like the 90% of the 5 months that I was there for the first war in the Gulf, you know, because the first Gulf War was very quick. I mean, we got in and out, and it wasn't like today where we spend years and years. And so we had this 80-hour ground battle, and it was super intense for 80 hours that we were like ground combat. I was a forward observer. I have tons of pictures of, you know, I mean, you can see the one up here where vehicles were burning and all this stuff. And you can see the soot from the burning oil wells on my face on the right there. The bottom picture is kind of funny. So this is a treat. So the publisher of my book would not let me put this picture in. And it was super important for me because I wanted to put it in. There was a purpose, because they said you can't see it. Like it makes no sense. Like it doesn't, but it does. It does make a lot of sense when I tell the story about it. So when I came out to myself, when I realized what this darkness was, it was during that 8-hour ground battle. I'm in artillery, and we had artillery hitting on the left and then artillery hitting on the right. And so the way artillery works is they were zooming in on us. They were zoning in on us. We didn't have GPSs like we have now. And so there was a moment, you know, when I was in my early, you know, my late teens, early 20s, that I thought I was going to die. I literally thought this next shell is going to hit our vehicle and I'm going to die. And so I closed my eyes and just sunk down into my hatch of my vehicle, because I was the driver of it. And I just thought, this is it. And I closed my eyes and I just waited for that shell to hit. And I thought, this is going to be, you know, my life. And then all of a sudden that shell didn't hit, and I opened my eyes up. And what I saw was what you see down on your screen, that I don't have this picture anymore. I just have a blurry image of it. But it was a picture of my brother and his girlfriend. And when I opened my eyes and saw that, I just instantly started crying, because I realized what that darkness was for the first time in my life. And it was only because I thought I was going to die that day, that darkness was that I was gay and that I had never let myself love another person. And that was the hardest thing in that moment to reconcile. And it really honestly took that profound of a time and that profound of a feeling of that I was going to lose my life to actually probably let me, you know, even think to myself that that's what this is all about. And so I promised myself, if I ever got out of that I would never, ever deny myself love, and I would live my life authentically, because I understood that I didn't have the happiness that my brother had in that picture. So that's kind of why I wanted that picture in the book, but it's understandable. It's kind of blurry. The intention of that photograph was actually to take a picture of POWs behind, but the camera didn't focus well, and I got half the shot out, half the shot in. but that picture is the only, I don't know, memory that I have of that picture of my brother and his girlfriend. So it was pretty crazy. So basically I came home. I was different. So now I had this new reality that I understood who I was, but I also, it didn't mean I accepted it anymore. And I think that this is important to talk about, because for gay people, I think a lot of people think that just because you're gay, that you 100% accept yourself and everything's good. And it's not always like that. Sometimes we have to come to terms with ourselves, and we have to come to terms with what we can. So I'm going to show you this video of when I came back from the airport. And the reason I think that this is so crazy is that I know what I know here, and I know that this is the first time that I've seen my family, the first time that I have this new reality that I understand. And there's this kind of closed off conservative, like shelter that I do, that I'm just kind of protecting myself, but it's weighing in on me. And I just think that as much as I can't articulate that in words, it's neat to watch a video where you know what is going on as the audience. You know that I went through that experience, and I had that hanging over my head. And this was the first time that I saw my family after that. So
there's nothing like making somebody feel uncomfortable.
Hold his sign up, Marnie.
Huh?
Hold his sign up.
Oh. All right. Get up on your sign, Stephen.
Stephen. All right. Let me do it one more time.
Let's not make you dizzy. I wish I'd have got my plane.
Carl was getting fat.
Getting smart.
How's it feel? Stephen, how's it feel to be home?
I can't even say.
Okay.
Shaking when I came off the airport.
BJ, get down.
Oh, I'm on.
Grandma
we started at 12.
That's all right.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
So for me, I just think that it's kind of interesting to see, just knowing that what I know now, it was just the first time I saw my family, just scared to death. Like, what is this new life going to be like? So my journey is that I get home. This is kind of a neat story. So I'm not a superficial person at all. Like my parents are funny, because they're like, my dad loves ghost stories, and he has like a little ghost thing that he tries to go to Gettysburg and see if he can, do any kind of like ghost research and whatever. And so I always think that stuff is so hokey. And I mean, I even bought him a dumb Christmas present that helps him like do readings on lights just for his own benefit or whatever. But so the story is that up in the upper left there was a newspaper that put a flag in it for all the soldiers that were serving. My mom put that up in the window. She put that little candle in the window, which is one of those little electronic candles that you get at like Kmart or whatever, Walmart. And it has a bulb in it, and she put that in. And the entire time that I was over there serving as a teenager, she had that in the window going. So the night that I came home, we stayed up half the night. You saw the video of where they picked me up at the airport. That night we stayed up so late, just talking. I mean, just visiting. I've been overseas. I was the first person in my family to not only join the military beyond my dad, but to go to college, anything. So I'm the first person that went overseas, and I'm telling them all about my experiences in Germany. And we just stayed up almost all night. So before we went to bed, I turned off all the lights, and I turned off that candle, went to bed. And I woke up the next morning with my mom kind of screaming, "Who turned out that candle?" And she was kind of crazy. And I was like, "I'm sorry, I turned it out. I didn't know." And she's like, "It's fine." She's like, for some reason, I just always wanted that on, and I never wanted to turn it out while you were gone. But I guess, now that you're home. And she was kind of joking. Well, she goes to turn it back on, and it wouldn't come back on. And so it was kind of dumb, because I was like, in the book I explain it, is that it was like my protector, my guardian when I left. And I mean, as I laugh about it now, it's certainly like a bulb that just burned out after all those years. But for anybody that's superstitious, there's your kind of ghost story of my candle protector. So I put that in my book. So now let me talk a little bit about activism and how that started to come into play. And ultimately, the reason to talk about that is that's what led up to what I did at the GOP debate. You'll understand why it was so important for me to ask the question that I asked that day. So this chapter is called Pink Triangles. And when I was in Germany, I got to go to Dachau, one of the prison camps there. And it was just an amazing experience. I'm not a huge history buff. However, going there and actually walking into those gates, looking at that iron gate that say Abre macht's frei, I can't really say German very well, but it basically means work makes free. Walking into that environment and just smelling that air and just knowing that all those people died, they lost their lives there, was so profound. And I was trying to, document this for my family, because they're never ever going to be able. They've never been overseas. My dad doesn't even really ride on a plane. I wanted to be able to share with them the experiences that I was able to do while I was in Germany. So I had a little disc camera, and I didn't have very many pictures in it, just a couple pictures. So I would take pictures of whatever I thought was profound. But they had just like all the crazy stuff where they killed people, and the memorials. They had art things that did things, and like that were I don't know how to say it, like a tribute to never ever remember, letting past repeat itself or history repeat itself. And so I just thought it was profound. I took all these pictures, stuck them in a box, forgot about it. That's one of the pictures there that I took. The reason I actually took that picture, I'll explain this, is that I only had like 5 pictures on this thing. But for some reason, something about this uniform just really struck me, because they had these wooden shoes, and I could be within inches of this uniform, and I could almost feel that a human being wore that died for no reason than who they were, and that just, to me, I don't know, I just thought that was more powerful than taking a picture of ovens or anything else, that torture or any of that stuff, because that was like the human part of it. That was the human story of somebody that lost their life. So I took that picture and stuck it in a shoebox like we did back then before we had iPhones. And, I stuck it under my bed and forgot about it for years. So when I went to college at OSU, it was a great time, because I was finding myself, and I was meeting other gay people. I went to a sociology class where somebody came and talked about gay people. I couldn't believe this kid looked normal to me. I was like, he doesn't look like how I think of gay people. And I don't want to sound, like negative when I say that, but I'm trying to show you the train of thought that I had as a gay person. Like, I actually thought gay people were weird and abnormal, and, because I didn't have any examples I had newspaper articles that made fun of them. And so when I saw this kid, I thought, God, he looks just so normal. And so I reached out to him, and we ended up becoming friends, and he connected me with a support group. And again, in the 90s, there were more support groups than just gay friend groups. And, we would hang out. And so I kind of got my wings in OSU. I started to get a little bit more broad, and started wearing, like the silence equals death buttons. And I had a homophobia as a social disease bumper sticker when I came out to my family. That was kind of an accident. I came out to my brother, and he went ahead and came out to my parents for me. And that was kind of a hard story, but I talk about all that again in my book. But I'm going to try to stick with all the stuff that led up to the GOP debate. So anyway, I had the necklaces, the pink triangle necklaces, silence equals death. I was just like a hell on wheels about being who I was, and being proud of who I was. And then one day I decided to pull that shoebox back out. So I'm a little deceiving the way I told this story, because I didn't show you the full color picture of that uniform. But when I pulled it out of the shoebox and looked at it again, this is the actual picture. I can't tell you what that did to me when I realized that picture that I took of that person that lost their life could have been me. That could have been me. And that was just incredibly powerful for me. It was like this awakening of an activist inside of me that said, my God, somebody died just because of who they were. And that's just so unfair. And so then all of a sudden it born this little activist that I was like, no, I will never ever deny myself. I will never ever not, try to tell my story or be fair to myself and try to tell our stories, just like I'm trying to do now. So anyway, let's move on a little bit into OSU, and this is an incredible story. So this is kind of an update to this presentation, because it has kind of a new ending that just happened within the last couple of years here. But anyway, so there was an article in the Lantern newspaper, and it was a kid named Dan Hazard. And this kid was pretty wretched. He would write the worst things about gay people. One time we had a walk or a march on Washington. So this Dan wrote this article. It was called "Look Who's Back," and I'll summarize it for you. It basically said, "Thank you for leaving the Oval and Ohio State for the weekend to go to Washington, because for the first time I don't have to worry that I'm going to get AIDS because you guys are here, and then I'll cut myself in a game of football." And then he goes on just to rip everybody apart and says, if your lifestyle's so good, why did the average lifespan of an AIDS patient is 39 years old, and all this horrible stuff like about us killing innocent children. Just this kid was just wretched. And it wasn't just one article. This kid was pretty known for writing stuff like this. I want to give you thanks to the homosexual community for opening my eyes. I can see what it's like to live on a campus with the removal of gays from our society. So we're not just saying that he didn't like us there. It was like he was suggesting, genocide, basically. So that activist in me said, no, that's not right. So I wrote an article back, and it was called Dear Dan. And so I was very cordial in it, and I was very much hey, let's meet and talk. And in essence, what I was saying to him was that you wouldn't know me from anybody else. I did not go to Washington this weekend. I was here on the Oval. And if I was standing right beside you, you wouldn't know me from anybody else, because I look like you. I sound like you. I'm exactly like you. But then I kind of changed courses and said, you know what? I'm not quite like you, Dan, because I actually served my country in Operation Desert Storm. And when I served my country, I was defending everyone, regardless of their sexual orientation. That means everyone, including you, Dan. And so I was basically telling him that I served my country to give you the protection and freedom to say what you just said about me. And I don't want you to forget that me and other gay people afforded you that right. And I thought that was an incredibly powerful thing. Now, I'm going to come back to that story so you can see a little bit more that happened with it when I get to the trust the power of your voice part. So I joined the Army again after I got out, went to college, came out, got everything under my wing. Now I'm out. I have gay friends. I've got my boyfriend, Josh. And, once you get out of the closet, it's really, really hard to go back in. Let me just tell you. So I rejoined in 2001. So first of all, I'm going to say I have an impeccable bad timing to join the military. I joined originally in '88. So we hadn't been to war since Vietnam, I think. And, I talked to my dad, and he's like, we haven't been to war since Vietnam. I don't think we're probably going to go to war anytime soon. So I joined in '88, and I'm in war in '91. I'm like, whoa, that was really good timing. And so then I got out, went to college, got my master's degree at OSU, decided, you know what, I like the military. I'm going to get back in. So in 2001 of March, I rejoined. And I thought, we haven't been to war since Desert Storm, and this is March of '01. So obviously we all know what happened in September of '01. But anyway, this was hard because I had to basically hide and go back into the closet. So here in Columbus, we have what we call Red, White, and Boom, and it's a 4th of July celebration that's huge here. And so, I'm back I'm in the Army Reserves, and I have to live very, very sheltered. I can't tell people who I am. I can't Facebook friend people. And one of my soldier friends who I was friends with, his family, was like, we're going to Red, White, and Boom. Would you like to come with me and my family? And I'm like, no, honestly, I'm not going to go. I had every intention of going. I was going to go with Josh. I was going to go with a girlfriend of mine and go down there and enjoy it. But I didn't want to say that because you had to live sheltered. You couldn't say anything about your personal life. You had to always keep everything, covered. So I'm down there and I'm watching this terrific 4th of July celebration. They're playing all this inspirational music, and they're like, thank you for all the people serving. And it just felt so patriotic. You just felt so proud to be a soldier serving your country. And here I am, like, I've been to one war, and this was after 9/11, and it was like I was in again, and I'm like serving my country. And every single thing about that moment says that I should be so proud. But there was something that just gut punched me about that I just thought, you know what, I have to lie about who I am to serve the country that I love. And I'm trying to protect the rights and freedoms for people to not have to lie about who they are. And I thought, Jesus, that is crazy. And so as we were walking back from the celebration, and I'm talking to these guys, I'm like, this is bullshit. You know, I can't believe that I have to do this, and it's not right. And why would I have to lie about who I was to serve the country I love? And I was really upset by that. I'm sitting there complaining about it. And then all of a sudden, and there are millions of people down there, this guy that invited me kicks me in the back of the leg, and he's like, hey. And he's like, and I was like, oh, hey, you know, and I quickly grabbed the girl that I was with and introduced him to her. And I'll never forget how bad I felt about that, because I felt like it's so rude to my boyfriend, you know, and it was like, but that's what we did. That's how we had to, you know, do this, to hide who we were. And I just think it's so important for people to hear that. I mean, all the time you can pull up to Lowe's and there's a parking space that says, if you've served, you deserve this. And we know how much we appreciate people that have given their entire careers and lives to their country. And then now you're hearing the story where it's like, you know, people actually had to lie about who they were and hide their spouse and do all this stuff. It's kind of insane, actually, to think about. So the reason I entitled this book Jessica and then crossed it out in Josh was that when I was in a relationship with him and got back in, we ended up getting deployed. And so that was a crazy story in itself, because the day that I found out that I got deployed, my unit actually started to send my unit over, and then I got pulled late. And so I didn't think that I was getting deployed, got last minute notice. I was at work. They called me. I went and grabbed Josh and I lunch and then went home. He was on a call, and I said, I've got to talk to you. And he could tell something was super serious. And so he was like, what's going on? And, you know, I had our lunch downstairs, and I told him I'm getting deployed. And this is something like, I started the book basically acknowledging this, because that moment in our relationship, you know, we were pretty early in our relationship, only together a year or so. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to lose him. You know, he's not going to wait for me. Nobody waits anymore. Nobody cares or whatever. And it's a big sacrifice to ask somebody to wait a year while you leave. And so I said, I completely understand if you're not going to wait. And Josh looked at me and didn't even blink an eye and said, there is absolutely no way that I'm not going to wait for you. And I looked at him, and I remember saying this to him. I said, if you wait for me, Josh, I said, I will marry you. And I meant that 100%. That was incredibly sincere. So anyway, here's the dedication. I said, to the love of my life, Joshua, you fuel my fire. You bring out the best in me. I never think of me. I think of us. We are one and always will be. I love you with all my life. I told you that if you waited for me when I went to war, you would be the one. And I put you are the one. So basically, that's the way that I open my book. This picture is kind of fun. This is a local place here in Columbus that we went out to eat a lot. It's a kind of a gay restaurant bar type place. And I like this picture so much because it personifies our entire being. So in this picture, what's happening is that I work out a lot. So I love to get my arms in the picture if I can. And Josh loves to cover my arms in any picture if he can. So I was trying to flex, put my arm up, and he tried to cover it. So then I tried to bite his neck, and our roommate Adam, or our friend Adam, took a picture of it. So that's basically, in a nutshell, that's us in every means of who we are. But that night is when I actually asked him to marry me. So basically, this was during an R&R from Iraq. So I had been deployed. I told you the story about the plane ride going over. That was horrible. I called Josh after they made fun of us on the plane. I said, I can't do this. You know, I'm not going to be able to do this. And he was my motivation. He was my inspiration. I had to talk to him. He had to talk me through this every day. So it was just hard. You know, we had to, you know, the reason that I did the Jessica thing is that on the phone one time I heard a soldier talking, and I could hear his wife, and I could hear that it was a female. And it just scared the heck out of me, because I thought every time I talk to Josh, they can hear it's a male. So I turned down the volume as much as I could, and I always called him Jessica. And so in my book, I called him Jessica and slashed it out and put Josh. And it's kind of funny because publishers don't like that. If you have any kind of slash throughs in a publisher's eyes, it's always like that you're doing some kind of edits. So I had to fight them to keep the slash through in for the meaning of it, showing that it's not Jessica anymore. It is Josh, you know. And so, that R&R, I got to come home and I got to be with him. And it was just an incredible moment. That's the night that I asked him to marry me, because it was while we were home from leave and we had mortars hit. I'm going to tell that story in a little bit, but basically we decided that could be it, and we wanted to get married. But just remember this picture because that's the night that happened. So anyway, another example of something that happened was that my soldier friends would always want to come over and play video games, because you can see my arm there has all the old arcade games on it. I built an arcade machine that plays 200-some thousand old Atari games and like Frogger and Pitfall and all the old stuff, and so they would come over, and, one night they called me and they were drinking, and, it was me and my boyfriend are sitting there sleeping, and they call me and they're kind of drunk. They're like, "We're coming over, we want to play games." And whenever they came over, I had a routine. We had to run through the house, hide all the pictures of us, pull down vacation pictures, put everything in closets, hide everything. And it was just a drill, and we were used to it. And it really never dawned on me until this one moment how awful that was, because we were in bed sleeping, and I woke him up. We jump around, we hide all the pictures, and then I'm downstairs, and he's like, "Well, I'll just sleep at my place tonight." And I was like, I had all these pictures in my arms, and all of a sudden my phone rings, and it's my friends, and they're like, "You know what? We're too drunk. We're not coming over." And I'll never forget how embarrassed that I felt looking into his eyes with all these pictures, and thought, what has my life come to, that I'm literally hiding my life, and I'm holding, this should be my sanctuary. This should be my safe place. And I was more worried about what other people would think of me and had to hide who I was. And then, he looked at me and was like, "You know what? I'm just going to sleep in my place tonight." And those moments were so hard. And again, while I'm telling you all this is what led up to that night at the GOP debate, whether people thought it was political or not. So the next kind of fun thing is the Oliver. So this is an actual screenshot of our text messages for me and Josh. This is how we communicated. We would be on, and honestly, it's kind of sad because the clip art of the phone probably wasn't far off from my phone back then. But we had this screenshot of us saying goodnight and send pictures of each other and kissing each other goodnight. But even text messages, I even had to be careful because my phone had games on it. My friends would play it, and I'd always be sitting there thinking, "God, please don't text me anything, Josh." So we came up with this code, because one time I said, "I love you" on a text message, and the phone auto-corrected it to Oliver. And we kind of joked, but then all of a sudden I thought, when I'm on the phone with you and they can hear it's a male, let's just say Oliver, and that means I love you. And that's our code word to not get caught. And so that kind of stuck. And I mean, nods to Apple or to iPhone or whatever for auto-correcting to Oliver. Not great publicity. However, it saved us. It was our code word that we used. When I actually got deployed, the last time that Josh could come to see me, we were at the airport and we were hiding under an escalator. There was an escalator there that all the soldiers were out and their families were together and their wives were embracing, and everybody was just, it was just a really powerful moment where families could reunite and try to make friends, and everybody understood what we were going through. But not Josh and I. We had to hide like rats under an escalator, crying, and we were playing a game that we played together. And I didn't want anybody to see him. We told people he was my brother, but we just sat there and bawled under this escalator. And I remember one of my soldier friends came out and he's like, "Hey," and I was like, "Hey, it's my brother Josh." And of course that wasn't Jessica. She couldn't make it, according to my story to them. But we're both bawling, and I always think back to that and think they must have think, "Geez, you brothers really, really love each other because you're just really upset." But those are some of the things that really led up to that GOP debate and what I did. So while I was in Iraq several times, this was the second war. These are some fun pictures of my second deployment in Iraq. The upper left-hand corner, so you saw the GOP video. So actually, that GOP video was shot right there on that bed with that laptop that's laying right on that little dresser there was hopped up on that bed, and that's where I shot that video. Originally, when I shot it, I actually kept my face off of it and took my name tag off, and because I didn't want it to be about me. It wasn't about me. And even to this day, it's not about me. It's about all of us. This is just one story in it. But anyway, so in Iraq, a lot of times stuff would happen and we would be mortared here where we were in Tikrit. And Josh and I would be on Skype and I'd be like, I got to go. That was a mortar. And I would just drop everything, cut the signal and just go. And we would go to the bunkers. Those are kind of some of the bunkers there. You see in the middle picture, that was during a sandstorm actually. But anyway, Josh, I never thought about it because on my end, there's adrenaline. There's like, we just got mortared, go take your position, grab your weapon, your armor, your headgear, everything, go out and wait till next instructions. And then we can get accountability. On Josh's end, the screen goes black and he just waits for hours. Am I going to call again? Will he be notified? He wasn't my spouse. He was a friend. And so there were times when he would just sit there and think, if Steve died, would I even know? And then he would be worried, should I call his parents and say that they got mortared? And, all these thoughts would be going through his head because he didn't want to scare them. And so those were the moments that were really, really hard. The bottom right-hand corner picture, I love that because Josh was very sweet. He would send me like love notes. And I don't know if you can see it. He would say, love Jeeks. And basically what it was I would tell people that's Jessica and then all of her initials, where it's really Joshua's initials. But again, I put up my little love note. I could never put screensavers or pictures of vacations or actual pictures of him. I just had to keep everything very, very general, and so this is what meant a lot to me in Iraq is I had that love note from him. He sent me a chew toy for my dog Macho, which I don't know why, but that was so cool to like have my dog's little chew toy where he ripped it up. And then for some reason I found a poop bag in one of my bags and I was like, oh my God, it's a poop bag for my dog, And so I like hung this stupid thing up and it's so dumb because you're like, why would you, of course it wasn't used, but why would you hang that up? But I'm like, any memory you can have of home. So that was my little life. That was my family right there. That was the person that I loved, the dog that I loved. And, as coded as it all was, that's what I could hang up to show myself to people. So I go back to that LA Times article when he said, it took a lifetime to show it and it only showed his face for 15 seconds or whatever. And those are the things that I think of that were really, my life. So those mortar incidents really profoundly impacted us. Now go back to that picture. That night, Josh and I were at a bar because I had 14 days of R&R. Came back and we were talking. We said, we should get married. I was trying to bite his neck. He's trying to cover my arm picture, and so we started to get this harebrained idea about where can we get married? Like where would marry us right now in the 14 days that I have? And so we started looking and we Googled and found out Washington D.C. would marry us. So then we called to find out what's involved with that. How can we do that? Because all of a sudden it was this incredible story. Think about this. Like I'm home from leave, that picture of the sailor dipping the girl in front of the ship, I'm home from leave from a war, I got married to this person while I was on leave from war. It's so cool. And then Don't Ask, Don't Tell. They were saying that they were going to repeal it. They just couldn't come up with a date for it. So many things were just seeming so cool. So we thought, let's find out. So we found out that they would marry us in Washington. So we're driving like a bat out of hell to get to Washington because I only have a couple of days left. And then we tried to find out how long it would take to get a marriage certificate and everything. And then I was going kind of renegade here because this was before they lifted the appeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And I'm getting legally married in a state, even though Ohio wouldn't recognize it and the Army wouldn't recognize it. It's a pretty bold move for somebody that hadn't had the paperwork that said the repeal has happened. But it was, I knew it was the right time. It was the right time for Josh and it was the right time for me. And so we drove to DC, and on the way there, my mom's trying to research where we could get married. So we found an officiant, and her name was Tiffany. And the picture of her, I'll show you kind of a picture of, oh, no, I don't have it. So basically this officiant had a picture, and her, it showed her, she's African-American, and her husband was Caucasian. And it said on her website at one time, our marriage was illegal too. and she specialized in LGBT weddings. So we contacted her and we asked her, do you know of any sites? And she's trying to find if there's any really good sites in Washington that we can get married. And I said, it's just important because it's historic. You know, Don't Ask, Don't Tell is going to be repealed. We're going to get married. Marriage isn't even allowed in every state. And we just want to make this incredibly, you know, the perfect moment. And she said, this sounds weird, but there's a cemetery that has some really historical places in it for gay people. And she started telling me about this tombstone where this gay soldier died. Not soldier, but he was in the Air Force. But he died, and his name isn't even on his tombstone. It just says a gay Vietnam veteran. And it said on the tombstone, when I was in the military, they gave me a medal for killing 2 men and a discharge for loving 1. And I was like, that is incredible. So then I'm like, Josh, what do you think about us getting married at his grave? And it sounds so weird, but we were like, just think about this. You know, this guy, when he was in the military, he couldn't even be married. He couldn't even be out. He was the first person that fought the military. His name was Leonard Matlovich. He couldn't even be out in the military. He was the first person that fought the military. How about we honor this guy by getting married at his grave site, where you know, that it's only legal in this one, you know, place, while I'm on leave from the military, you know, and he kind of paved the way for me to feel bold enough to do what I'm doing. And so we decided that moment was right and we wanted to do that. And to this day, I wouldn't change that in a million years. I mean, for the most expensive wedding, you know, it was just me, Josh, an officiant, and a friend that took pictures. And it was in a cemetery, and I wouldn't change it, any bit of it. It was perfect. We got the something blue, something borrowed, something new, or whatever. You know, that Bible was a Bible that I bought Josh in Seattle that he loved because he loves antiques. And so we took that. And so we got married there at that site. And it was the most important place in the world, you know, for me. And then when we had to say goodbye again after that, it was so freaking hard. We were like, he dropped me off at the airport and he left me this little love note in my wallet. It just basically was so sweet. It said, you know, I just want to say that I'm so excited that now I'm married to you, and I can say, yes, I'm married to Steve. And it was just a sweet thing that he left. It was on our wedding ring, like the little card that came with it that he got us. And so, yeah, it was an important moment. So one of the things that I love to do is that people ask me all the time, what would you do if you got you and Rick Santorum in a room together? And the assumption always is that I'd beat the crap out of him, or let him have it, or let him see how a gay person is in real life, for his homophobic rants and comments about gay people. I'm going to show you his response to my GOP question in a little bit. You'll see what a horrible person he is. But there are a lot of times when people say, what would you say to Rick Santorum if you had the opportunity? And this is where virtually this isn't as impactful, because I love to watch people cry during this part. But this is something that supplements the book. And this is hard for me not to cry when I hear this either. But this is something you can't write in a book, because you guys are going to hear an actual voicemail that Josh left me on the plane ride going back after we got married. And if this doesn't like make every eye in the room watery, then I don't know what will. But instead of fighting with hate, this is what I would fight with. I would play this message for Rick Santorum and explain to him what gay means.
Hey, babe, it's Josh. I just called to tell you I love you, and I miss you, and I hate saying goodbye to you. Oh, God. I had a ton of fun these last 2 weeks, and I can't wait to get back. I love you more than anything, baby. So much. And Skype me or call me or do whatever you want when you're on your way home or Iraq. But I love you, and I had so much fun, and so happy I'm your husband. I just can't wait till this is all over with. It's gonna fly by. All right. I love you. Bye.
So if anybody ever questions the pains or sacrifices that families make, or gay families, then I think that it's important to hear that and know that on top of everything else we had to deal with, we were still hiding pictures and making up fake names and everything else. So that's how I would answer Rick Santorum. But anyway, so an opportunity came up. So what led to the debate was that in the Stars and Stripes, it had an article about the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And this is what really capped everything off, that this wasn't political, but it made me so angry that one of the things that I read is that they couldn't come up with a date for the repeal of it. And I kid you not, it said because I think that it was John McCain or Admiral Mullen, somebody said, we don't want to affect the morale of the people that are actually over there serving their country. I'm just going to pause for a second and let you think about that. Listen to what you just heard Josh go through and me go through, and hiding pictures and you know, having code names and not being able to put pictures up, and you know, putting that chew toy with my dog and a fake note that I couldn't say who it was. They didn't want to affect everybody else's morale for the people that were around me. And that just felt so wrong. Couple that with, you know, I have to lie about who I am to serve the country that I want, and I'm fighting for everybody else's freedom and protection except my own. It just all bubbled up to this isn't right. And so I started seeing commercials on TV where Michelle Bachmann started making it, you know, like I'm going to make it a platform against gay marriage or gays in the military and gay marriage. And the GOP kind of started to embrace that that's our platform. So I just thought how scary that is, that they're going to actually run on this and they can't come up with a repeal for the date. And again, this wasn't political against the GOP. There are good GOP people, there are bad GOP people. This was more me thinking to myself that people don't realize we are this silent entity. We are LGBT people that make up thousands of people in the military. There were at least 14,000 discharges during Don't Ask, Don't Tell time period of people that were linguists and people that could have prevented 9/11 because they were gay. So, I mean, there's this witch hunt getting rid of people. And I just kept thinking this is our moment that they can realize that we're here, we're good people, we're serving our country, but yet we're invisible. They still think of us as this entity, like that we don't really exist. Like they're like, you know, we don't want to affect the morale of everybody else from these silent people that might be a dime a dozen somewhere over there. And here I am serving, and I'm like, no, that's not fair. So they had this thing where you could come on TV, you could ask a question from where you were serving your country. Or actually, you could just ask a question to the GOP. And I was like, it wasn't even like meant for soldiers overseas, but, you know, we have technology. And I'm like, it started as like a bully, you know, like when a bully picks on you every day, you know, every day you think, wouldn't it be great to stand up to that bully, you know? And that's what it started to feel like. I was like, what if I submitted a question from Iraq and said, hey guys, I'm over here serving my country. You know, my morale matters too. And so what about me? And that's kind of what I thought, you know, that I just don't, and I didn't want to be the face of it. I really didn't. I didn't want it to be about me. I didn't want my name out there. I didn't want to write a book. I didn't want to do any of this stuff, but I just wanted people to know that we are here. Gay people are here and we're real human beings. And so I decided to do this video and I cut off my face. I took off the name off my uniform. Just like that other uniform, I wanted to see that it was a real live, living, breathing human being sitting there serving their country, protecting people, that was going to ask that question. So I sent in the question and to the GOP debate. And then they basically, Google emailed me back. I don't know how many you've ever gotten an email from Google. Like I was like, oh, Google just emailed me. And they said, you know, we like your question, it's great, but this is going to air after the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was on the 20th. So you can show your face, and we really want you to. And I was like, no. I wrote back and said, nope, I don't want to do that. You know, I don't want this to be, I'm not out to anybody. I'm not ready for that. I don't even know what that would do to me here. And I was just not interested. And so this is where Josh comes in. He's always the kindle to my flame. He's the kerosene on everything. He was like, no, that's wrong. We need to do this. We need to ask this question. You need to ask it because they need to hear this. And so he got me all revved up. And so I responded to Google and said, in that LA Times paper, it had a great big quote that said, I have reconsidered. And so I recorded the question that you heard. And one of the reasons that I actually had the courage to do this was in the Army, we have core Army values, and 3 of those values are honor, integrity, and courage. And I kept thinking about those Army values, and what they had brought me up to believe was honorable is that you have to have these values. You have to have honor. You have to not lie. You have to be integritous, and you have to have courage if you're going to be a soldier. And I thought, how can me lying about myself and not asking this question be any of those values? So I took those Army values and sent in that question. So now I'm going to let you hear Rick Santorum's actual response to that question after I got booed. You heard the fictitious Hollywood telling of it, but here was Rick Santorum's response to it.
I would say any type of sexual activity has absolutely no place in the military, and the fact that they're making a point to include it as a provision within the military that we are going to recognize a group of people and give them a special privilege in removing Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I think tries to inject social policy into the military, and the military's job is to do one thing, and that is to defend our country. We need to give the military, which is all volunteer, the ability to do so in a way that is most efficient in protecting our men and women in uniform, and I believe this undermines that ability.
So what would you do with soldiers like Stephen Hill? I mean, he's out. You saw his face on camera. When he first submitted this video to us, it was without his face on camera. Now he's out. So what would you do as president? I think
look, what we're doing is playing social experimentation with our military right now, and that's tragic. I would just say that going forward, we would reinstitute that policy if Rick Santorum was president. Period. That policy would be reinstituted, and as far as people who are in it, I would not throw them out because that would be unfair to them because of the policy of this administration. But we would move forward in conformity with what was happening in the past, which was sex is not an issue. It is not. It should not be an issue. Leave it alone. Keep it to yourself, whether you're heterosexual or homosexual.
Keep it to yourself, whether you're heterosexual or homosexual. That means that when somebody says, "Hey, I went on a Friday night. Me and my wife went to a movie," they can't say that anymore. They can't open up their wallet and show you pictures of their kids. So what he was doing was not asking me to keep my gayness out of the military. He was saying, smoke and mirrors. He's saying everybody should just keep all that out. And I can tell you, if any sane person had to try to do that for 24 hours, not share the sex of the person that, the gender of the person that they're dating, or anything about their family life, or anything what they did last night, they would go crazy. It was really hard. What I didn't really get to show in this video is after Rick gave that answer, was all the applauding and the people that stood up and applauded that. So people ask me about the booing, and I'm going to be fair. The booing, honestly, that's what it was all about, that a gay soldier got booed while he was serving his country. It was only a handful of people, and I recognize that. There were probably really good people in the audience that wouldn't have done that, and there were probably people around them that told them to shut up when they did it. However, that wasn't what hurt me. What gut punched me was that all those people stood up and applauded his answer when he reduced my entire honorable 26-year career to sex. That was insane to me, as the people applauding. So what we had no idea what was going to happen was that out of that video, all kinds of stuff started happening.
President Obama told a gathering of gay and lesbian activists that he's committed to equality. In his speech to the Human Rights Campaign last night, the president criticized his Republican rivals for their reaction to the booing of a question by a gay soldier.
We don't believe in the kind of smallness that says it's okay for a stage full of political leaders, one of whom could end up being the President of the United States, being silent when an American soldier is booed. We don't believe in that.
The booing occurred during a Republican presidential debate last month in Orlando. The candidate to whom the soldier's question was directed, Rick Santorum, said
the funny thing about that video is that we had a quick response force, a QRF, that night. And it was like midnight. They woke us all up. We had to run out and protect the wall or whatever, the border. And so I'm sitting there with my weapon and with fellow soldiers. And one of my fellow soldiers said, "Yeah, I heard Obama talking about you today." And I was like, I laughed and I said, okay, I'm just going to say that there's no point in my life where I ever thought that somebody would say those words to me ever. But when that actually got aired, it was kind of funny because in Iraq, it was like 4 a.m. And I thought maybe nobody saw it. And then what happened was that the media picked it up, and it became so big. Like our chow hall probably sat a good 3,000 people. It was huge. It had like probably 20 different monitors with the news it always showed. And I was sitting in that chow hall, and I was not out to one person, not even one person in Iraq. No, not one person knew. And all of a sudden I saw my face in asking that question nonstop on the media cycle, on all those TVs. And it's like every time that happened, I would just close my eyes and just wait for the 30 seconds while I asked the question and try to get through it and just feel all the eyes looking around. And, you know, I don't know if they knew it was me or not, but it was awful. But, you know, one of the kind of fun stories is that people were running around with their laptops showing everybody the YouTube clip, and nobody really addressed it with me. Nobody came up and said, I saw you. And it was like, it was more that one of the people that I was serving with that I didn't really care for that much. We had our differences. He came up and he said, you signed a lot of autographs. And I said, it's pretty awkward. And he goes, why is it awkward? And I said, well, obviously nobody knew. And he grabs my hand, and I'm a real personal, you know, space guy. Like, I'm like, what are you doing? And he grabs my hand, he rubs my hand, and he goes, your gay isn't going to rub off on me. And I was like, I would have never expected that reaction from you, because we didn't really get along, you know, whatever. But he said, you know, my partner and his husband got married a year ago. And I was like, oh my God, look at what we have in common. And I said, so on that plane ride over, when they asked, like, when they did that thing with the Brokeback Mountain comment, he said, that pissed me off really bad. And that's when I realized that everybody that was sitting there might have had a son that was gay, might have had a friend that was gay, might have had, you know, they might be gay themselves. And even though the momentum was for the people that made the homophobic comment and everybody laughed because of the, you know, you're just a little bit uncertain or whatever, how much it hurts people. And that's why that's so important to understand that it does hurt people. And so on the plane ride home, coming back, I slept like a baby, because nobody did that. Nobody was going to do that at that point. And I was out, and he was vocal about his brother, and just momentum had changed. It was incredible. But what I didn't expect was the amount of coverage that started happening.
What did you have to ask you? What did you think of the booing that went on the other day about the gay soldier? Did you have a visceral response to it?
I did have a visceral response. I'm not sure it's because my son spent a year in Iraq, and I know my son and all the kids with him, kids, they're grown men, I don't think they give a damn whether a guy firing a rifle to protect them is gay or straight. I don't think they care about that. And look, this kid risked his life. This kid is there for a year. And I, quite frankly, I thought it was reprehensible.
Right, and no one spoke up. That entire panel, not one person said anything.
So, and then the irony of that is that the son that he was talking about is the one that he lost to cancer. And now he's our presidential nominee. But anyway, so we just weren't expecting all these people to start coming out. And I actually ended up at one point when this happened during the night, Josh was like, Google the word gay soldier. And so I Googled gay soldier, and I popped up. He went to bed because it was like 9 o'clock at night where he was, and it was 4 a.m. in the morning where I was. By the end of my work day, you could Google the word gay, and I was the first hit on it. And I was like, it was kind of funny because I'm like, I did never wanted my life to be this. This is not, I don't want to be the gay person. I don't want to be like the dictionary definition of what gay is, and I was, you know, having my own panic attacks about everything that was going on. So then the fallout was just insane. It just kept going and going and going.
So what can we possibly learn about the candidates during their third debate in 15 days? Probably nothing. But the audience continues to surprise.
In 2010, when I was deployed to Iraq, I had to lie about who I was because I'm a gay soldier, and I didn't want to lose my job. My question is, under one of your presidencies, do you intend to circumvent the progress that's been made for gay and lesbian soldiers in the military?
Yeah, I would say...
Yeah, boo! I give the audience credit. It takes a lot of balls to boo a guy who could stick your head in his biceps and crack it like a walnut. Look at those things. Those aren't biceps. Those are like dodecaps. I'm serious. If this guy turned into the Hulk, His arms would stay the same size. They would just turn green. Of course, Rick Santorum handled this ugly incident beautifully. No, he did not chastise any individuals in the crowd for their disgraceful outburst. But on the plus side, don't ask, don't tell.
That policy would be reinstituted, and as far as people who are in it, I would not throw them out because that would be unfair to them because of the policy of this administration, but we would move forward in conformity with what was happening in the past, which was sex is not an issue. It is not, it should not be an issue. Leave it alone. Keep it to yourself, whether you're heterosexual or homosexual.
What planet do you live on? Honestly, what planet? If sex is not an issue? Yes, the Army has never mentioned spouses, heterosexual or homosexual. We need to go back to an Army where soldiers never specify anything about their sexual orientation. Like the old Army drill sound-off. I don't know, but I've been told Eskimo genitalia of unspecified gender are mighty cold. Those classic World War II aircraft, the Memphis Pat. And the plane that dropped the atomic bomb, the Enola, none of your business.
So we just couldn't anticipate all this stuff. You know, I mean, my Army friends were kind of funny. At one point, they were like, I think you were just so happy that John Stewart talked about your arms. I don't even think you care about the gay part. But it was just kind of a fun thing. But then there were other articles or other things that came on. And this one from Fox News, I think, is so incredibly powerful to play because this is a drop the mic moment. And this is something that I really hope people hear what he's saying here.
Senator, you say sexual activity has no place in the military. Heterosexuals have been openly heterosexual for centuries in the military without any problems. And you talk about gays not being given, or that they shouldn't be given special privilege. All that Don't Ask, Don't Tell and the repeal of it does is say that they are given the same rights as everybody else has had forever.
Well, the problem is that sexual activity with people who you are in close quarters with and who happen to be the same sex is different than having a discussion and being open about your sexual activity where you're not in that same situation. So you're talking about injecting, as I said before.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you think that homosexual gay soldiers are going to sit there and go after their male counterparts in the barracks?
I didn't suggest that.
Well, you said they're in close activity, close proximity.
They're in close quarters. They live with people. They obviously shower with people. The whole kinds of all the things that are involved in living in a barracks or living out in the field. Those are issues that, again, some people. You're not talking about that individual person, but you're talking about the ability for people to be able to have that unit cohesion, to be able to work together in an efficient fighting way, and obviously, and also, by the way, the effect on retention and recruitment of people to live in that environment. And yes, there are people who would feel uncomfortable in that environment, and as a result, it could hurt our ability to retain and recruit and to put the best fighting force in place.
Senator,
as I said before, Chris,
Senator, if I may follow up, because we really are running out of time, and it's continuing on this conversation. You say don't inject social policy into the military. Their job is to fight and defend, and they're not a social experiment. I want to put up a quote for you. The Army is not a sociological laboratory. Experimenting with Army policy, especially in a time of war, would pose a danger to efficiency, discipline, and morale, and would result in ultimate defeat. Does that sound about right, sir?
Roughly, yes.
That's a quote from Colonel Eugene Householder, who was in the Army Adjutant General's office in 1941, arguing against racial integration of the military.
So just think about that. Think of how powerful that was. I mean, and honestly, that was Fox News. So, you know, I mean, I think that this does strike a chord with almost anybody. So Josh and I had the opportunity, we had a platform, and we could let this go away or we could tell our story. So one of the things that happened that is a really cool thing that I talk about in my book is that the Army PIO, the people that have to do all the public information, had to talk to me after I made that thing. And he met me in Seattle, and this guy was a big guy. And like, I was like, oh man, this is where the Army's actually going to officially tell me what they think I did was wrong and I shouldn't have done it. And I was terrified. Like I was scheduled to meet with him for 2 hours. They had to arrange it through my command and everything. And he came and picked me up, and he's like, let's go get a cup of coffee. And so we went, and he said, why'd you do it? Like, that was his question. Why'd you do it? And I was like, well, I decided to walk him through it. I started telling him all the things that I'm telling you that led up to that question. And so we were supposed to spend 2 hours together. We ended up spending an entire day together. And about toward the end of the day, he said, Captain Hill, he said, I'm going to confess to you. My son, who's 21 years old, came out to me recently. And he's like, I grew up macho, shooting guns. He's like, I don't know how to relate to my son. He's like, so listening to you today has really kind of helped me understand my son better because I don't understand him. And I said, oh, I'm going to blow you away. I said, your son learned the same things about himself being gay from society that you learned about gay people from society. Your son has to unlearn everything about himself and what other people taught him that it means to be gay before he can even understand himself what it means to be gay. I said, now you understand your son better. And he looked at me and he goes, man, he goes, if you ever write a book. So at the end of the day, he dropped me off and he said, Captain Hill, he said, you can let this story die out. He said, and it will. It'll be a 15 seconds of fame. It'll be gone. It'll fizzle away. He said, or you could tell this story. And he said, I'm going to tell you my personal opinion is that you need to tell this story. He said, this is a great story. It's an Army story. It shows why we should have never, ever done this. So I used those words that he gave me and decided to write my book. And I decided to tell the story. And Josh and I started telling the story. We started having discussions with people. We started getting to meet people, got to meet famous people. And, that Army PIO was an inspiration. Here's us with Thomas Roberts and Rachel Maddow and actors and all kinds of stuff and just meeting other people. And one of my soldier friends in Iraq after I came up to me. She was one of my best friends that I'd known for years. She came up and I didn't know how she was going to respond because I was like, I've been lying to you for 10 years. And she hugged me and she goes, Steve, I love you so much. She goes, hey, why don't you come to church with me on Sunday? And I thought, oh God, what does that mean? So we went to church, and then afterwards she said, I've got to tell you something. She goes, I haven't been completely honest with you. And I said, about what? And she goes, the same thing. And I was like, I don't understand. And she's like, the same thing. And I couldn't even comprehend that she was telling me that for 10 years, she had lied to me the same way I had lied to her. And we had been so covering our lives up, and we were friends, and we could have been supporting each other that whole time. And that was just incredible for me to just try to comprehend that and understand it. So Josh and I started to use the power of our voice. We started to tell our story, and then kept telling our story, and kept going out and speaking at events. And it just kept going on and on. We tried to get our names changed in Columbus, Ohio, and we met with the magistrate who told us that it was against the law to change our names for the purpose of what we said, because we said we wanted to change our names because we got married, so they weren't going to let us do it. And so we fought that. We used the power of our voice to fight that.
He can change his name to Ocho Cinco, and Sean Combs can change his name to Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, and Diddy Dirty Money. Shouldn't these two guys be able to change their names to whatever they want? The case they're making in a Columbus courtroom now on 10 TV News HD at 6.
From Central Ohio's news leader, presented in high definition, this is 10 TV News HD.
We have an update now on a gay married couple fighting for the right to legally change their name. The men say they want a blended name now that they're married, but Ohio law doesn't allow them to change their name for that reason. Today, they formally asked a judge to grant their request.
Being the matter of the name change of Stephen Michael Hill.
It will be up to Magistrate William Reddington to decide whether these two married men can hyphenate their last names.
On May 3rd of 2011, we were married in Washington, D.C., and we were using this route to change our last names.
Joshua Snyder and Stephen Hill want to be known as Joshua and Stephen Snyder-Hill, but Ohio law doesn't recognize gay marriage. They can change their names for just about any other reason but that.
Any way that this would make your life easier?
I don't think so.
No.
They could have said yes, which would have been a valid reason to change their names. But they said that wouldn't be the truth.
The reason that I want to change my name is because I married this man. I love this man, and I married him, and that's my reason for doing it.
After a lifetime of keeping secrets about their sexuality, they say they're standing up and asking to be treated like other married couples.
I can't lie anymore. I cannot do that. I've done it my whole life. You know, I fight for people's liberty and freedom and civil rights being in the military. I've gone to 2 wars. I just don't feel like that I should have to lie on an application that somebody else doesn't have to lie on.
Well, what I'm going to do then is go ahead and take this matter into consideration, so I will be writing a written decision.
Now, Josh and Stephen say they've been told that normally name changes are approved immediately, which leads them to believe theirs will be denied, and if so, they say they will.
This is where this presentation kind of starts to change for you. You understand that it's not about me or my story. This is about trusting the power of your voice and making change. This is an appeal for me, for every single person watching this, to understand how incredibly powerful it is when you start to tell your story. We started telling our story and kept telling our story. And we had the platform to do that, which was awesome. But you never understand, if you trust the power of your voice, what you can do. So we filed a lawsuit while I was still in Iraq. And the lawsuit was for marriage. So basically, when Windsor was decided, or Burgerfell for gay marriage, but we're talking about Windsor, I guess, for the DOMA thing, is that there were a lot of cases that were in the works for the DOMA to fall down and everything, and ours was just one of them. That was a group of service members that all wanted to have the military recognize their marriage, and so we filed a lawsuit. So I had to go back to my command again and explain. Not only was I the guy that got booed, but now I'm actually suing you because I want you to recognize my marriage. And I'll never forget talking to my commander, because I said, I had to go in and say, ma'am, I want to explain what I'm doing. And I said to her, and she said, Captain Hill, she said, I would take 10 of you if I could. And I thought that was really cool, because she was saying that you've never caused me an issue. No matter how crazy this has all been, you're not an issue because you're a good soldier. And I thought that was really neat. Now, I always want to give nods to the picture down here. This is CW4 Charlie Morgan. And the reason it's so important is that she and her wife, Karen, and her daughter, Casey, were all in our lawsuit. And they were just like us, plaintiffs like us. Just like I say, it's not about me, it's about us. She was another person that could tell an incredible story. She had stage 4 breast cancer. She joined this lawsuit. She was in the last part of her life, and she spent the last part of her life advocating and fighting for everybody that she would never meet ever in her life to be able to have a right that she didn't have. And that's how she spent her last days of her life. She could have spent it with her wife. She could have spent it with her child. She could have been selfish, but Charlie didn't. She joined this lawsuit, went out and spoke. I mean, she, with cancer, went out and we're giving these talks. And when I say it's us, I want to name her name. I want people to know who she is and know what she sacrificed, because she's one person in our army of soldiers and women and men and trans people that have served. And I just don't want people to forget her name, Charlie Morgan. So we started doing activism stuff. So Josh and I decided we were going to take 25 couples to the Supreme Court. And I'm going to give Josh nods on this. It was really his idea. It was when they were trying to decide about marriage. And we took them to the Supreme Court and got them married on the steps of the Supreme Court. Why this is such a cool story, as they were so guarded. They were like, you are not allowed to do any kind of activism at the Supreme Court. You're not allowed. We don't allow it. You have to be beyond this barrier. And so we talked to them and made sure that we were following every single rule, because we weren't allowed to go up on the steps, that we wanted to do that. And it was really important for me to do that, because I thought maybe one of those justices are in there right now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, anybody that could look out and see us, Scalia, that could look out and see us actually going through this and understand that these were living human beings, It's just like when I did that video, I just thought America can look into my eyes, the eyes of an actual person and not of a hypothetical person. These are married couples that we wanted to take and get married, and we thought maybe this would move somebody. So we got them married, and the whole time we were yelling at them. Some people had signs were like, "No, you can't protest. We're not allowed to do that." And one of the guards was kind of watching us, and it could be the guard in that picture right there in the back, but he started coming up to us, and we were like, "Oh, we're busted. They're going to nail us." You know, we'd taken these guys all the way on a bus trip and paid for it. We raised funds for it, and it was just an incredible. I talk about it in my book. Even like, I'm not a big drag queen person, but we had drag queens, local drag queens in Columbus, do shows to raise the money to make this happen. And I'll never forget watching one of them in a mirror, getting ready and prepping, you know, himself and trying to be so perfect to be able to raise money for something. And I just thought, God, how selfless is that? Like, he's not getting anything, and he cares so much about the way he's going to do this. And I was like, that's really cool. And then I kind of connected it with Stonewall and thought, you know, drag queens were some of the first people that fought for us. And here they are, and 20, you know, whatever it was, 15, still fighting for us, you know, and I thought that was really cool. But we raised the money, took them there. This guard approached us, and I was like, he's going to shut it all down, you know, before we get them all married. And he looked at me and he said, "Hey guys, I can't let you go up there as a group onto the steps." He said, "But there's nothing that prohibits each one of you as a couple from coming up and walking down the steps of the Supreme Court and filming it." And it was, the hair on the back of my neck still stands up when I think about that, and just think, we moved him. That day we moved him. He saw us, and we changed his mind to let us do that. So by God, every single one of those couples did that. They went up and we announced their names. They walked down the steps of the Supreme Court. And this was before they had decided DOMA. And I'll never know if there was a justice in there watching that. I'll never know. But I'll never know that there wasn't. So that's why I say you have to trust the power of your voice. You never know when you're going to make change. We came back and we were grand marches for the Pride Parade. This was the video for the Sea Bus of Love that we made. Oops.
You guys are all part of history right now. You guys are making history, so give yourselves a hand and scream out.
On June 21st, 2013, 25 couples will be making history by participating in the Sea Bus of Love, sponsored by Marriage Evolved. These LGBT couples come from Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, and West Virginia. The Sea Bus of Love will be leaving from Columbus, Ohio, and traveling to our nation's capital, where true marriage equality exists today. They will all be getting married at the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C.
It is so important, you guys. It's so important for everybody to stand up for ourselves and stand up for what we believe in. That's what our country was founded on. When we came here, the Declaration of Independence said that all men are created equal. We all have the same rights. We all have the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what we're doing right now, is we're getting those rights.
These amazing couples will be making a lifelong commitment in front of the building where DOMA's, the so-called Defense of Marriage Act's fate will be decided. Once the couples have made history in Washington, D.C., they will travel back to Columbus, Ohio, and celebrate Pride Weekend. Pride changes lives as newlyweds and heroes of the city.
So basically, is it the end? That's the question. These are my certificates of retirement appreciation, because I just recently in November of 2019 retired from the military. And so that's kind of the end of my military service. But I can tell you that this certificate of appreciation that was sent to my husband from the U.S. Army is probably one of the most important things that I'll ever own, and most important pieces of paper, because a lot of people fought for us to be able to have that piece of paper. And for me to be able to have this piece of paper that says that I retired and has my name on it, and I was out. When I put my hyphenated name that I had to fight to be able to do on my uniform as part of my uniform, that was one of the most incredible moments in my life. So what is this all about? Trust the power of your voice. You have no idea by using the power of your voice, what you can change. This is that newspaper article that I showed you from that paper. This is an article on the right in 2014 where I came home and signed books in my hometown as a hero, as somebody that I had a line for people to come and have me sign books at my hometown. And so all I can think is some little kid is going to pick up a paper today and they're going to see that versus what I saw when I was a kid. And that's why it's so important for us to speak up and to tell our stories. So that way our youth have something that they can look forward to and it can be an inspiration to them. Let's go back to somebody like that. So let's go back to Dan. You remember Dan, right? So recently, I actually posted in a forum and told people about that incident. And I posted this letter and somebody said, I recognize that guy. He is a judge now. That guy grew up and now he's a judge in Maumee, Ohio. And they were furious when they read his homophobic writings. And literally, we went after the media, and you can see that he had to apologize. So this guy had to come out and make a public apology because we called him out on all these articles. And I trusted the power of my voice and went after him as a judge. And he had to come back and tell everybody how sorry and how homophobic he was for writing all that stuff. And so you never know when you use the power of your voice what you can change. You never ever understand what you can change. So I'm going to close on this. We were the grand marshals of the Pride Parade here in Columbus. George Takei wrote the foreword of my book. He came and was here in our Pride Parade too. They asked me to write this kind of little speech that I gave for the Pride March there. And the title of it was called Pride Changes Lives. And so I gave a lot of thought about that. And I really want to read this to you because I want you to hear what my thoughts were because they're just as powerful today as they were back then. So Pride Changes Lives. I serve as a soldier fighting 2 wars, swearing to protect the Constitution of the United States. I serve as a city employee, providing resources to underprivileged in Columbus, Ohio. And now I serve as an advocate for the LGBTQ community. What makes a superhero? Rosa Parks told people at the time I was arrested, I had no idea it would turn into this. It was just a day, just an ordinary day. The only thing that made it significant was masses of people joined in. Harvey Milk once said, all men are created equal. No matter how hard that they try, they can never erase those words. This is what America is all about. Harvey used those famous words of the Declaration of Independence of everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Leonard Matlovich was one of the first service members to challenge the military's ban of gay people. His fight changed and opened up people's minds. He started the discussion. Each one of these superheroes were spot on. Combine all of their messages, and you have people that stood up for themselves, urged people to tell their story. They were arrested, fired, and one of them was killed. They all changed many lives, and by doing so, they changed the course of history. All of them were living their normal lives and never expected to be a superhero of change. When politicians threatened us by telling us that they would reinstate Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I challenged that. Josh and I were not legally allowed to get married in our home state of Ohio, so we fought that. Of course, this is in past tense because this is when I gave the speech then. When DOMA prevented Josh from having the right to bury me should I die in a war, we joined a lawsuit to defeat that law and strike down DOMA. Josh and I were told we had to lie about the reason for our name of our changes or our change of our names. We fought that. We fought back. What does it take to be a superhero? You don't have to be a soldier to serve your country. You have to tell your story. If someone passes a law to take away your rights, you have to challenge that. You have to stand up for yourselves and others who are not strong enough to do so. That is serving your country. Pride doesn't change lives. You do. There's a superhero in every single one of us. Any one of us can be like these great leaders before us and change the world. So as Harvey Milk famously once said, I'm here to recruit you to be soldiers of change. And if you follow your heart, you will change history. And the funny thing is, I didn't know that Soldiers of Change was going to be the name of my book at the time, but it ended up becoming that. So I'll close on this slide of me and my family. This is me and Josh and our family. So thank you very much for the time. I know that I probably went a little bit over, but I think it's a pretty powerful story. And just know that any single person listening to this has the ability to change the entire world with their voice.